What's up, everybody? Welcome to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., Jesse Cofield holding it down for us in the DraftKings studio in Boston. We got a great show for you guys. As always, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, review us, leave us a 5-star rating, and check us out here live Monday through Friday, 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern, every day on the DraftKingsNetwork.com, the YouTube channel, Samsung TV Plus, and Roku. Fun guests coming up today. Spice Adams, former Chicago Bears defensive tackle, one of the funniest and most original meme creators on God's internet, especially from the football sector here. Very giving, very funny dude. Excited to talk to him about what he's got going on. And then a guy you know very well, Dad, Eric Allen, former Philadelphia Eagle, now does some great work over covering the Las Vegas Raiders as he's getting set to try and crack into Canton and join the Hall of Fame, which has to be a really exciting, obviously, honor to be considered amongst the greats, but sort of a nerve-wracking process as you're getting down here towards the end of being one of the final guys.
Yeah, it's going to be fun to talk to him. Eric and I got along so well together, and we played in Philadelphia. One of the great cornerbacks to play, and trying to get that gold jacket. And I wanted to talk to him because also voting ends tomorrow for it, and trying to get that late push for him. It's amazing how players have to kind of, unless you're that first ballot guy, have to kind of push for votes, which seems odd to me. I mean, this is how it is, though. I'm somewhat stunned at it. I mean, your stats are your stats, and he has some phenomenal stats. He's been out of the league since 2001, so he's been in this position for a little bit right now. But you know what? We'll talk to him about the process, how he's feeling, because while there's a small percentage of people to ever play in the NFL, there's even a tiny, tiny percentage of those players that end up wearing gold jackets or even finalists for gold jackets, and he's one of them. So it'll be great to reminisce with him. As you mentioned, he's still very current and doing things with the Raiders pre and post and knows NFL and talks NFL all the time. So going to be interesting to talk with him about this process.
I'm always curious when those guys start to let themselves think about that as a possibility, whether it's as a player, because there's a clip going around. We've got so much great stuff to talk about today. Jason Kelce, among them, came out on his podcast and addressed the notions and the reports that he had told his team he was retiring. And there was an old clip that circulated of him and Chris Long on Chris's podcast from last year at the Super Bowl. And Chris was telling him, you're a Hall of Famer, and was trying to ask him the question about who he'd let present him. And Jason was doing the very humble thing that you'd expect from Jason, where he wouldn't confirm that out right away. Chris kind of had to coax it out of him. And it was so strange, Dad, to hear that from a guy who all of us look at as a lock Hall of Famer in Jason Kelce, and, him, Lane Johnson on his offensive line, both guys that we'd expect to do that. But for a current player, it seemed like a step he wasn't willing to go. So I'm fascinated when guys like that are going to be amongst that group of players are considered start to allow themselves to sort of think about it.
I mean, think about it when you're growing up. You dream in the backyard when you're playing wiffle ball or baseball or something, hitting that game-winning home run or catching the game-winning touchdown or throwing the game-winning pass, touchdown, or whatever sport, the game-winning goal in soccer or hockey. I don't think anybody as a kid, as an 8-year-old in the backyard, is saying, I'm going to be a Hall of Famer. I mean, it's about being the star on that team or having that monster play, that big play that you dream about. But you're right. At some point when you're playing, like your buddy, guy you played on the line with at Notre Dame, Zach Martin, I mean, he has to know he's walking into the Hall of Fame. But he's another one. If you asked him about it now, I'm sure he would push it off as well. And I think obviously most would. You don't want to kind of talk about that situation because it's going to happen down the road. Sure. He has to know. I mean, for him to even and he would try and play it off by saying, we'll see. But we all know what the answer is. I just think these guys, I get it. I mean, we'd all love to be in that position, but I certainly get them not diving into it.
There's also probably a reason they're that good, because they don't think about stuff like that, and their standard is so otherworldly high. So we'll peek behind the curtain of that with Eric coming up in a little bit. But, Dad, you mentioned Zach Martin and the Star, and of the unexpected results that were out there us walking in here and what we got from Jerry Jones in the last 24 hours probably qualifies as unexpected for a lot of people. Let's get to 3 for Thursday, 3 big questions that we've got leading into the football weekend here. And Dad, none bigger than the decision that Jerry Jones made in Dallas of did they make the right move, bringing back Mike McCarthy. Adam Schefter, ESPN NFL insider, reported yesterday that Jerry Jones and the Cowboys had made that decision. And Dad, it's really interesting to watch the reaction to this, because there's a lot of people that look at this as the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. There's a lot of people that turn around and talk about what Mike McCarthy's done, 36 wins in the regular season over the last 3 years, putting his team in position to be in the dance each of those years, and by all accounts being pretty well liked and respected by the players in that locker room as signs for why this should have happened. So for you, was this the right decision? Did they get this right?
Listen, I am always, we talk every year about coaches. Are they going to get fired? Who's on the hot seat? And quite honestly, I hate it. I hate calling. I would never call for somebody's job. But you talk about it as an analyst, hey, there needs to be a change here. There probably needs to be a change like we saw in Vegas with situations in the locker room and with the Chargers as well. So I thought he was going to be gone just because of Jerry Jones' comments after Week 18. After the last regular season game, that next day, Jerry was asked about Mike McCarthy and his job security, and he said, we'll take it one postseason game at a time. And it couldn't have been worse, right? They got to one postseason game, and they got smoked at home where they'd been undefeated. So Jerry set this up to say, let's go one game at a time. They got destroyed at home. So I thought, well, he's going to be gone. Jerry basically as much said so when he said that, made that statement. If we're grading now on the postseason, that was a big F, not for Mike McCarthy alone, but everybody. So I was surprised at that. But you know what? I'm happy for the guy. There's going to be, I know there are some analysts who said they should stay, but there are some analysts who are screaming he should have been fired and should have been fired last year and should be fired this year. And everybody certainly can have their opinion. I understand that. But I'm happy they did that, because here's the one thing I look at, Mike. This team was a good team in the regular season. As we've seen the last 3 years, they were 12-5. 2 of those years won the division, won one playoff game, and lost 3 in this. So in calling that game, the things they got beat on in this game, they were doing better, save for at the end of the season, they were getting run on. They were giving up 160 yards on the ground the last 3 weeks of the season. It was a struggle for them on the interior and the linebacker position, and they were struggling there. But, they could rush the passer, and they were playing well. We know the offensive firepower as well. See, there's parts of me, Mike, that looks at a good team and says, okay, they're good, and you can't get them over the hump. I brought up the story many times. The late Marty Schottenheimer, when he coached my brother in Cleveland, got to AFC championship games, lost to Denver a couple of times, and ended up getting fired for not getting to the next step. We know that with Andy Reid in Philadelphia as well. But I have been and always will be a guy that says the players need to execute. This was a really good team, and they stunk in that wild card game. And the last I checked, Mike McCarthy was calling plays, didn't throw some of the passes Dak threw, didn't drop some of the balls that they dropped, and defensively, didn't miss some of the tackles that they missed. We sit there and break it down and get put in better positions and such, but the players are still the ones who played well all year. And then you get to the postseason, and it's the players that aren't executing on the field.
Certain games and got dropped in some of the biggest games they played this season. Sans beating a bad Philadelphia team late in the year, and us looking at that differently because of what we thought Philly was at the time. Dad, you can turn some of that around and say the fact that this Cowboys team has laid an egg in some of the biggest moments is an overall preparation and execution problem that does trace some of its roots back to the head coach. Like we talk about that in terms of how penalized this Dallas Cowboys football team team is too, the fact that they're not playing clean enough football to get it done in some of those pivotal moments. So Mike McCarthy deserves a ton of praise, especially for what he did as an offensive play caller this year, took over for Kellen Moore, had the spotlight on his back, and helped Dak Prescott to one of his best seasons as a pro. But on the other side, if we're going to give him credit for things like that, for Mike McCarthy on the blame side, the team doesn't show up in big moments, and you've also got a coach with a very obvious clock management problem that's always followed him that's going to be one of the easy things to point to.
Okay, I agree with all that, and as I was continuing on and was going to finish up with on this was, I guess my point overall is you have a ready-made team, right? This is a team that doesn't need to be rebuilt. They've got a lot of talent on this team, and the money issues they're going to have to work on. Micah Parsons is going to be the highest paid defensive player. They need some help on defense. I guess overall, Mike, my question would have been, you've got a team ready to win that has won. Where are you going to go? Were you going to change everything? I mean, I know you got a lot of openings, and I know there's a lot of candidates, but are you willing to take a team that's won 12 wins the last 3 years and change everything? Head coach, O coordinator, D coordinator, position coaches, scheme that you're playing, and learn a new scheme. Now, players certainly can do it. It's not like it's never been done before, but is that the route that you want to go? I guess that's my point, because you're right. Listen, I'm not absolving Mike McCarthy of making mistakes. He, without question, he has, as the players have on the field as well in big moments. So it's hand in hand, but we know it's a lot easier to fire a coach than sit there and reassemble a team, especially when you have good players. But I guess overall, that would be my question. Where are you going to go unless you hired from within and just brought Dan Quinn there to keep everything the same?
I think the where you're going to go is the interesting part of this offseason, because there's a lot of really good coaches that we talked about in the market. There's a lot of really good veteran coaches that we've talked about in the market. And there is some precedent in this league for coaches coming in and winning Super Bowls and winning at a high level with a roster that's largely been built by the prior regime. So it's not completely unfounded in the approach. And again, we've talked about it a lot for teams this offseason. You're weighing your decision against this marketplace of unbelievably veteran talent in the head coaching market. We know it probably wasn't going to be an up-and-coming coordinator. That's not really how Jerry Jones has gotten down in a lot of this. And so I think especially for an outside hire, so that was probably all far-fetched. But I do think part of that is interesting to weigh here. Dad, ultimately, I agree with you. I think this was the right decision, because I think for Dallas, your charge can be pretty easy. Now, we've said for the last how many off seasons, hey, Dallas, you got to figure out how to stop the run, even with all the good stuff Dan Quinn does on defense. And they haven't meaningfully addressed it. They tried to with Mozzie Smith in the draft to some extent, and that didn't work out. So this offseason, you got a clear directive. You didn't have linebackers and people that could stop running the football in the middle of that defense. You got to go out and make that happen this offseason, come hell or high water, and figure out how to kind of do it on a bargain with Micah Parsons' contract looming and the money you know you're going to have to allocate there. So I ultimately think between the fact that the locker room isn't lost on him, because he's walking into a lame duck year. They're not extending him. He's playing into the last year of his deal. And as Adam Schefter pointed out, Dallas has a history of that. They just did it with Jason Garrett, who now calls Notre Dame games and hangs out on the desk for Sunday Night Football in America. So not the best comparison in the world, but understandable given some of the circumstances that we described. But there's a lot of pressure that comes with this move, because you're not, while you are very good in a lot of ways, you're not good enough to win in the time of year that you need to win in right now, and that's ultimately going to be your judgment. Like you talked about Marty Schottenheimer, there's a big difference losing in the AFC Championship game every year. If Dallas had been losing in the NFC title to a juggernaut Eagles team last year, or this year's 49ers, you can excuse that away a little bit more than getting dropped by Jordan Love in year one in the wild card round.
I agree. This year they got lost in a wild card. Last year they beat Tampa Bay and then lost to San Francisco. And the year before that they lost to San Francisco. So I'm with you. And I think, a lame duck coach or a last year, players do it all the time. They're on a last year deal, but it's different, coach and player. It's certainly not as bad as like in college. You rarely let that happen to show recruits, our guy's on a one-year deal that's not going to go well. So I don't think it's as bad an issue unless you're Mike McCarthy and know you just have a one-year deal and you'd like more security than that. Yeah, ultimately, I could have gone either way on this one. Like I said, because of Jerry's comments Monday after Week 18, I thought Mike McCarthy was going to be gone the way he set it up. But he'll get another year with this talent. They need to tinker with it, like you said, and try and get further in the playoffs. So we'll see.
And your point about the changes that would go on with that, it does seem like this is probably going to be the offseason. Dan Quinn makes the jump. He's interviewing for a couple more jobs coming up here soon. Seems to be one of the names in rotation. Now, there's always a chance in an offseason that we mentioned, crowded with candidates, that the game of musical chairs could leave Dan Quinn out, and he could be back there. But it does still introduce the idea that the change they've been bracing for, because they've been wondering if Dan Quinn was going to get got for the last couple off seasons, might finally come on that side of the football. And in which case it does, you have a pretty enticing offer to a prospective defensive coordinator coming over and saying, hey, we might not be perfect, but we got a little bit better than most for you here.
Yeah. Overall, I wonder if Jerry did any kind of backdoor channeling to find out, because I agree with you. If they were going to make a change, make it with a veteran coach. And there's a lot of DCs and OCs getting first-time possible head coaches getting interviewed. So did he inquire about Bill Belichick? Did he inquire behind closed doors about Jim Harbaugh to see? Because you're right, if it was going to be a change, it would have needed to be a change with a veteran coach, who could just step in and keep the ball rolling.
Yeah, would have been interesting in a day and age where we're watching all of these franchises put out the disclaimer or the news clip that we've just interviewed X, Y, or Z coach. You wonder if maybe Dallas went the opposite route and treated this more like a college football head coaching search than an NFL head coaching search. So, I think we're both ultimately in agreement that while I can understand, and I saw Dave Hellman, our buddy who does a great job over at Fox Sports covering the Cowboys, has been on with us a couple of times, kind of said it. I can understand, Dad, if Dallas Cowboys fans are not thrilled waking up today.
Yeah.
Because they've looked at this situation and they're dealing with this in totality. Like, what you've had as a Cowboys fan since the triplets has been average football by and large, and even getting to this point now where you're playing great football during the regular season in a lot of instances, and you're getting yourself a ticket to the dance every year. The standard that you've been sold at that organization is championship or bust. And when you've seen the same thing on repeat essentially for the last 3 years, and you feel like you just signed up for another round on that ride, I can absolutely see how there's this belief that I know how the story ends with this group right now. And if you're the Dallas Cowboys as an organization with the acquisitions that you're going to make and how you structure this offseason, it's on you to go out there and prove it, because the Cowboys are going to be well talked about again, I'd imagine, going into next season. Provided they can retain the majority of this roster. But no one can pick them reasonably to win anything of value next year until they go out and prove otherwise against some of the NFC elite, because there's just no reason to believe.
You can pick them to win the division. That's about it, right? That's about as far as you can go.
Yeah, that's true. Next season, you can safely do that, it seems.
Yeah, you can do that, or say they're going to get into the playoffs, whether they win the division or a wild card. But then nobody cares until the postseason with Dallas, because been there, done that the last 3 years, and they can't get over the hump of the playoffs. So, I think from a fan standpoint, it had to be at least 90-10. People thought it was over, right? And McCarthy was going to be fired. I think we all thought that was looming. We talked about when their seasons ended about Nick Sirianni and about Mike McCarthy. Would one, none or both be gone? And it looks like both are going to stay. I'm not surprised in Philadelphia, even though I understand the reasons you gave yesterday and the reasons people might have thought that might happen. But it seems, I think at the end of the day, both organizations are saying, you know what? We were winning. Now, Philly had a horrible end of the year after starting 10-1, but we have the pieces here to go back to what we were. We were just in the Super Bowl a year ago, so you have that, kind of hanging on to, saying, and we did it with a lot of the guys that are on this team right now, so we still think we can get back to that again.
It is an interesting foil in Philadelphia, right? Because while they got, if Dallas had made it to a Super Bowl last year, this probably wouldn't even be a conversation, even if there'd be some frustration this season. But how it went down after that and sort of maintaining that consistency over time is so difficult. I always say that in college, you're paying these high-level coaches for proximity to the prize. Can I get close enough, often enough, and then hit it right in 1 year? The problem with Dallas in the NFL is this was supposed to be your year. year based on the construction of this roster. Everything had built towards this being the season, and instead Mike McCarthy in Dallas now moves to 1-3 career in his postseason with losses, as you mentioned, to the Niners, the Packers, and the Buccaneers. So he's going to get another crack at it. You and I both think that's the right move, but Dallas Sports Talk Radio this morning, crack open the phone lines and enjoy one of the easiest days in your careers, because boy howdy, I'd imagine there is some ye angry haw going on.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Jason Kelce is making headlines all week about possibly retiring. We're not quite sure yet, but he's also been going viral for being a salt of the earth guy. So he stopped by his local McDonald's where he has a friendship with one of the employees who works the drive-thru. He went and signed a jersey for her. It was just an amazing moment here, and the internet has been loving this. And we also found out, this is journalism with a capital J, guys, courtesy of DK's own Ross Tucker, that Jason is a sausage McMuffin with egg guy. So he confirmed to Ross Tucker that that is his go-to order. Guys, how do we feel about this order, actually? And forgive me, is this sausage McMuffin, so that's just a sausage on a biscuit, and you have to add the egg?
It's a good question, because at McDonald's and a lot of fast food joints, yes, you've got to clearly state every ingredient or you can end up with some funky stuff. And Jason did say it's 2 sausage, egg, and cheese McMuffins with a large coffee every time. So he's going the full SEC there. He's got all the accoutrements on that. It's a great order befitting a man of his size, Dad. So shout out to Ross Tucker for getting the job done there. Obviously does great work for Westwood One, covers the Philadelphia Eagles too. Getting to the important stuff in the story.
Well, and listen, I like bacon more than sausage, but I like sausage on a sandwich because of the surface area. You're getting sausage in every bite. If you have bacon on there, you may not get it in every bite. The sausage is that patty, and I'm the same way, sausage, egg, and cheese, McMuffin, or I do a McGriddle as well. Those are the two things
I was going to say
that I will do.
The McGriddle's the superior breakfast sandwich at McDonald's.
Yes.
I'll say that right
is.
now. It's the best breakfast sandwich they offer, having 2 little pancakes essentially as your sandwich buns with that little bit of infused maple syrup in every bite. Jesse, I feel compelled to ask, because you're the person on here with the least trash palate of all of us here. Have you ever had any of the things that we're describing?
I believe I've had a breakfast sandwich from McDonald's. It was a long time ago, but I'm going to guess.
Mike, I'm going to guess, Mike, she had an egg McMuffin. The basic breakfast sandwich at McDonald's is the egg McMuffin.
I believe that's what I had. Yes.
Yeah,
it's
the
a
tried and
staple of
true
like group hangover foods. When people are just going to go buy something the next morning for everyone, they'll come back with a bag, and some conquering hero in your friend group who somehow least hungover of you goes to McDonald's, grabs a few coffees for everybody, and just a big sweaty. You know when the bag sweats? When you got the grease seeping through of the sausage, egg, and cheese McMuffies there. And to your point, Dad, sausage, absolutely the right way to go on that. It's got a little more ass to it. I always say I want my breakfast to have some ass. I want to feel actually full after the meal. And with the sausage, you get a little bit more density than some bacon that's just kind of thrown in there haphazardly.
Guys, I will say so I'm looking online. It says there are 480 calories in a sausage McMuffin with egg. So he gets that with cheese. So I don't know how many, maybe 120 calories more with the cheese.
Yeah.
So 600, so 1,200 calories of breakfast sandwiches.
And your point is?
Right.
I'm just saying, my point is just that obviously, like Jason Kelce, right? He's got to maintain his body weight during the season, right? So he's like, this is his go-to order. I'm just saying, that's a lot of calories for breakfast, not if you're a professional football player.
And the thing that'll happen now is, for the next couple of years, he'll still get that unless he is unbelievably disciplined right off the bat. The problem we have when we all retire is we kind of still eat the same when we're not working out the same. Now, I'd imagine he's going to keep working out, but the dude's going to be sore down the road for sure. But I get what you're saying. You start to, I'm 61, been counting calories for a little while. You got to do that as the metabolism slows down, but he's not at that point yet.
No, but he's going to have to chase little kids around, which is tiring.
And he's got his status as one of people's sexiest people alive to try and uphold now. I mean, you can't be the sexiest man alive while you're playing and then all of a sudden let that status slip when you got a chance to join in on the very long-standing trend. And Dad, Jason Kelce, former walk-on player at Cincinnati, not the guy that was ever the biggest or strongest as a player. You'd imagine for him, keeping weight on was a task that required adding a few extra McMuffins to the bit. And so even though he's retiring in his mid-30s, when to your point, metabolism starts to change a little bit, it's not quite as easy. I do think he's right in line to join the next wave of offensive linemen who drop the pounds after they're done.
Without question. By the way, you said walk-on in college. He was a walk-on running back at Cincinnati. A walk-on running back that then switched to fullback, that then went to the offensive line. And he started more games at guard at Cincinnati than he did at center. At the measurables in his draft year, he was 280 pounds. So he is no doubt, I know you went through it, setting alarms, eating peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and slamming shakes to try and gain weight. He's a guy, too, and a lot of offensive linemen are like this that have to do so much to gain weight. So you're right. He'll probably drop 40 right out of the gate, in the first few months once he stops all that.
If you'd like to hear more about that, me and Pablo Torre did a great episode of Pablo Torre Finds Out, where we talked to Joe Thomas, where we talked to Nick Hardwick, former, obviously, respectively, great offensive tackle for the Browns, former great center for the then San Diego Chargers, about the weight loss phenomenon amongst offensive linemen and how that goes. If you want to hear from Jason Kelce on a podcast, he's got a pretty good one. It's New Heights, and that came out yesterday, and he addressed the reports that had come out after their loss this past weekend about his retirement status, and this was what the man himself had to say about his decision still hanging in the balance.
Nick kind of gave me an opportunity to talk. I didn't announce what I was doing on purpose, despite, I guess, what's been leaked to the media. I just don't think you're in a position after a game like that to really make that decision. I just don't. There's too much emotion in the moment to really fully grasp that decision. I'm not trying to be dramatic and continue to draw this thing out. I'm really not. It's just something that I think, when it's time to officially announce, what's happening in the future, it'll be done in a way that's, definitive and pays respect to a lot of people and individuals that have meant a lot to me and has led to the career I've had. I don't think that it would be respectful or even accurate to be able to do that right after a game like that.
Yeah.
But I did address the team and pretty much said the same thing that I just said to you, which is, I got belief in every single one of you guys, cherish the moment you have in this league. A lot of guys like, if that is your last game, I feel sorry for you. And I'm like, don't feel sorry for me, motherfucker. I've had a
Hell yeah, brother. Hell yeah, man.
Wow. Travis.
This clip contains multitudes because by the end, both of them are on the verge of tears. Like, I'll give Travis that out as he was also trying to negotiate through some brother tears. And if you've heard Travis talk about it over the last few years with his own experience through college, like, Travis would not be here were it not for Jason putting his neck out for him. Travis said he wore the number 87 because that's the year Jason was born in. Like, all of these things are why he'd be emotional. But I do love to think about now in the context of the most famous relationship in sports that there's some like very emotional moment with Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift, and he's just in the background like, hell yeah, babe.
Hell yeah, because he probably couldn't say any more than that or he'd have broken up. And listen, Jason is right. You can't make that decision right after a season is over. There's too much baggage from the season. It's too emotional. You just finished that. You gotta take a breath. Now, I do think he's going to retire, but not shockingly, he wants to get all his ducks in a row, and he has a thought process about it, which, as I said, isn't shocking for the type of person that he is. And what I love about his career, Mike, is 6th-round draft pick, projected 4th-round draft pick that went in the 6th round, and 193 games and 193 starts. And really, the Hall of Fame career didn't start till years into his career, right? It wasn't like he came in with this ball of fire, wow, he's great right off the bat. He started right off the bat, but it took a while, and he built himself into this Hall of Fame player, which is a walk-in first ballot Hall of Famer. But like most things, he's handling this the right way, and he'll cry at his retirement. He'll cry when he goes into the Hall of Fame. He'll cry multiple times throughout all this.
I was going to say, it's the most alike I am with anything in Jason Kelce. The rest of the football stuff, he had way better, but crying at the drop of a hat. My brother in Christ, Jason, come on over here, big fella. Big wet tears waiting for everybody involved. Speaking of tears, coming up next, let's listen to college coaches cry about stuff.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. We've been talking about the transfer portal all during college football.
You can't do your job anymore. And people can say you got to change with the times. How does changing with the times help you have better relationships with your players when it's all transactional now? So what kind of relationship can you have with someone where the players feel like they owe you nothing and you owe them everything?
This was a tone-deaf moment.
Wow.
Very tone-deaf moment.
One of the great coaches of all, I mean, he's going to go down as one of the greatest to ever do it. Understood. He is by far an exception to a rule. Coaches leave all the time. So I am so damn tired of hearing.
He's like at UConn. We're fortunate that both financially with what people can make in NIL here and the opportunity to play high
women's college basketball, and what he's done is absolutely incredible. Separate that completely for some of the thoughts, and at least he does separate himself from everybody else. But I'm with you. I mean, to say that he says, well, they say you got to change with the times. Yes, you do. That's exactly what you. Now, maybe you don't as much as others have to, but again, you're the exception. And then the one example he picked out, I mean, it's ridiculous. It seemed he was aiming this at Seton Hall guard Lauren Park Lane. This is Gino Auriemma said, it's unfortunate because with some of the teams in our league, you get a player that's really, 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 really good, and you coach the hell out of them, and you just made them who they are, okay? It happened to Seton Hall last year, and the kid goes, yeah, well, I think I can make some money somewhere else. This Lauren Park Lane, who went to Seton Hall and transferred to Mississippi State, she was at Seton Hall for 4 years. She was a grad transfer. This wasn't one of these 1 year there and I'm leaving. And she clapped back at Gino saying it wasn't about the money. But basically she was there. She did stay committed there for 4 years before she left as a grad transfer, which so many people do. Man, talk about picking the wrong choice to try and make an example.
It's just the God complex that so many of these coaches have. You made them who they are. Like, oh, yeah, the player had no role in all of that. Yes, coaching is absolutely important. And any player worth their salt will give them credit for the help and guidance you get. And if you've got a special coach, man, it's such a fortunate thing. And I'm sure Gino has been that for so many people. But, God, the arrogance sometimes really is overwhelming. And, Dad, I don't want all of this to obscure the point that it is absolutely harder for coaches now to operate. It is a much different system for them from before. They have been having to weather a lot of change that comes with the sport all at once, with NIL, the portal, all these different things. I have no doubt that it is more difficult. Managing a roster now is tough, and I am empathetic to that and some of the schedules that these coaches have to deal with overall. Like, I don't want to make it sound like I have no empathy for that side either. Right. But to sit here and to feel like it's the continued vilification of college players for simply having a choice in their outcome when they are the ones who have a 4 to 5 year clock on their existence, potentially in their sport forever, given the sport, given their level of play, given their pro prospects, to try and make them out to be the villain in a system where we've seen time and time again is decided by television executives and coaches who want to leave for the next multi-million-dollar bag. I get it's not that same way in women's basketball for everybody. I'm not a total indictment of this situation. But in general, it's become a situation that, quite honestly, I thought this conversation we had had enough of. We had been through the mechanics of this new system, and we're kind of done with. And so to see it reignited by a coach of this caliber, who knows with his platform this is what was going to happen, was surprising.
Yeah, I mean, he has a platform, and he is not afraid to speak about the platform. But I'm with you. This is the era we're in. Players, and we've been saying this for a while, 4 to 5 years to try and position themselves. And I'm glad they have every right to do that now. Do they do it too much at times and make some wrong choices? Yes, but that's part of it. But at least they have the choice, because you know it's been going on forever. And in college football, we'll pick here. Kalen DeBoer leaves Washington for Alabama. Jed Fish leaves Arizona to go to Washington. Brent Brennan leaves San Jose State to go to Arizona. You get the domino effect every year. You don't think that's changing kids and what happens to them? And the coaches don't care about it? They'll say, yeah, I loved my time there, but they move on. They stepstone to the next place. There's an effect on, as you said before, on every single player. So they do it every single year, and now they're mad or dealing with it because the players, have the choice to do it now. So, yeah. The one thing that struck me is he said just what I said before. You got to change with the times, and he kind of shaking his head like, really? Yes. It's exactly what you have to do. Deal with this. That's what coaches, and again, not him so much, but everybody else. There's a new sheriff in town, and it's NIL and transfer portal, man. So adapt or die.
And listen, that stuff might change eventually. We'll learn more about that. Right. Players will learn more about that. Maybe it won't be as volatile in the future, but Leadership 101, which I'm sure Gino Auriemma knows all about, is, hey, you can't lead everybody the same. You've got to figure out what makes people tick, what they're motivated by, and meet them where they are in a lot of instances. And that's the charge right now. Is it a difficult one? Absolutely. Yes, 100%. But just because the group of people that you've had power over now has a little bit of agency in how their future goes doesn't mean we need to get up here and wring our hands about it just because one of your buddies probably complained to you. So, there was a lot to get off the plate there. Coming up next, we need to take a look at some big news in the NBA and laugh at another college coach for something completely asinine. Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Dad, while we're on the subject of college coaches saying stuff that kind of made me laugh and roll my eyes, did you see what happened to the Texas Longhorns men's basketball team last night? So they were playing now conference opponent, the University of Central Florida. And for UCF, I believe last night was their first road win as a member of the Big 12 Conference. They were down 16 at one point in the game, and they come back and they're able to beat Texas on their home court. And after the game, we saw a moment go on where Texas players were Central Florida players were throwing the horns down very near the Texas coaching line as they were getting ready to go for the handshake line. And Longhorns head coach Rodney Terry proceeded to start to coach the UCF players, telling them to stop that, and that is classless, and even spoke about it after the game, doubling down on this. Do we have the sound of that post-game of him doubling down on this?
I'm a big believer in, you win the right way, you lose the right way. And, I always tell my guys, whether you win or lose, you win the right way. You lose the right way. You carry yourself the right way. You don't go through the handshake line or prior to getting to the handshake line and have about 6 or 7 guys putting the horns down. We don't do that, because when you do those kind of things, it looks very classless, and it also looks like you were just hoping to win. We never go into games trying to hope to win. We go into games expecting to win. So we don't act like that. We expect to win. We don't jump up and down like we won a national championship. We sure don't step on anyone's home court deal and act crazy and try to show them up in any way. We don't do that. So that's what I was angry about, and I was letting those guys know you don't do that. You guys won. Hey, we shake your hand, tip our hat to you, but we're not going to let you act that way in our building. You're not going to do that. You're not going to put your horns down and do all that nonsense.
Yeah, they are.
I'm pretty sure losing the wrong way would be going and complaining to the other team about how they won. To me, that's not the right way to lose in this situation. But what do I know? I didn't lose apparently nearly enough games to be an expert on the subject here. This is the lamest thing I've ever heard. Like, if you're a Texas fan, you've got to be deeply embarrassed waking up this morning, because the amount of times you heard him say, we don't win like this, or we don't lose like this, referencing a team he doesn't coach, is insane.
I mean, to lecture like that, you know what you need to lecture about is why you lost.
Right.
Why you lost the game, not lecture the other team. Let them deal with it. If their coach wants to talk to their team about it or doesn't, that's up to him. It ain't up to you. So, I mean, again, you could say that at the press conference if you want. You know, that would be the time if you want to say something, not lecturing the players during the handshake line after. If I were the coach of the other team, I'd be like, hey, I'll coach my players, you coach your players, and by the way, tonight our players were better than your players, but that's not the place to do it. You want to go ahead and rant like that in the presser, go ahead. We're still going to have a little fun with you because you should be worried more about, the comment should be, hey, was I happy with the way the other team acted about the win? No, but it's more on us. How about pulling the thumb again, okay? Instead of pointing the finger and ranting about that. You can get your point in a line. I didn't like the way they did that, but they won the game. We need to worry about why we lost that game and go from there.
I think the real problem is that it's such an innocuous thing to do. Like, it's not, that's what I keep going back to is like, they weren't being like this idea that they were doing something so disrespectful that like the head coach of the other team has to call them out for it is ridiculous. It was so stupid. But Texans fans get really upset about horns down, which is a whole other conversation, that it's hysterical, like the rage that it evokes from them.
I mean, remember the Big 12 was penalizing players who do the horns down on the field because they were so obedient to Texas towards the end of their tenure. And Texas people would get so sad when you would do the horns down, which is objectively one of the most fun things to do in sports. Like, as someone, we had kind of like a half-assed version of that because USC does the little Trojan peace sign thing. Yeah. And I remember when we'd win there, you'd go and you'd toss it down, and it's a ton of fun. The horns down, infinitely more fun to rock down. It's so cool. And if I was a player that came in and hadn't won a road game in my new conference and got to do it at a place like Texas that I'm sure you watched as a kid or at the very least were aware of the history there, I would absolutely go in there and talk my stuff. The wise words of my buddy and former teammate Torian Smith will echo in my ear forever. People say act like you've been there before. I say I act like I'm never going back. That was awesome. And that coach going over there and deciding to bark at other players, you're right, Dad, is akin to going and parenting someone else's kids.
Yeah, which I would lose my mind over without question.
I would fight. I would throw hands.
We're talking about horns down.
Yeah.
Horns down. Seriously. You're going to go on a rant like that for horns down? Who cares? You lost the game. These are 18 to 22-year-olds, with emotion showing it. They pulled off a big win, right? That wasn't expected at this point. So you went horns down. Oh, my God, play the violin. Get over it. Get over it with your pompous sit on the top of the, the desk there saying, I'm going to teach these kids the right way and let them know that was wrong and you can't do that. Get over yourself and worry about why you lost the game.
I haven't checked. I hope the UCF social team did the right thing here, which is create the greatest supercut highlight film and tag Texas in it after the fact. It might come back to bite you in the ass later on, but why worry about tomorrow when you've got it so good today? And I don't know, man. Just the we don't win like that and we don't win like this on somebody else's court in reference to a team that you do not coach. Maddening, insane, all the reasons and all the things to me. Dad, speaking of basketball, we had NBA news. We talked yesterday a lot with Charlotte about the Indiana Pacers and going after Pascal Siakam. They have finalized that deal according to Adrian Wojnarowski. They get all-star forward Pascal Siakam. Indiana's going to send the Raptors Bruce Brown, Jordan Nwora, and 3 first-round picks. The New Orleans Pelicans are the third team in this deal. They will be sending Kira Lewis to the Raptors as a part of this. So the Pacers get their man, Dad. We talked about the issues that team would have trying to bring someone over in free agency. The thought of the picks in that. They're a team in contention right now that's a market that's difficult to get players of this caliber. And so they paid up the price to try and make a run, and they said, we'll figure out free agency after the season as Pascal Siakam is in the final year of his deal.
Yeah, I think they have to work this out because this move alone, while the odds, the DraftKings Sportsbook odds went from, they were at plus 12,000, now they're at plus 7,000 for their championship odds. I don't think this move, Mike, puts them at up near Boston, Milwaukee, and Philadelphia. but it's a good piece of the puzzle, I think, to sign, to build on with your young talent on that team, getting that point forward, getting that defensive player that he can be. So I don't think this move works unless they sign him to a long-term deal, because this isn't I'm going to rent you for the rest of this year and all of a sudden work in contention in the East. I don't think so.
Nope, and you give yourself the best chance, though, right? Because when everyone else is making their free agency pitches, they're going to be doing it without the benefit of having him inside that building, being able to basically spend the entire back half of the season recruiting him, showing him why he could and should pick this organization. And so you give yourself a chance, which I'd imagine for Pacers fans is a pretty big breath of fresh air to be relevant in the way that you've been, to have Tyrese Halliburton have the seasons he's had, and now to try and add even more to that and see your organization making these kinds of moves. Do want to take a minute, by the way, as we're talking about the NBA, to offer our condolences to the Golden State Warriors and the NBA family at large for the tragedy that they suffered here recently, as Golden State Warriors assistant coach Dejan Mayovic was a mentor of the two-time NBA champion Nikola Jokic, a former player in his native country of Serbia, died Wednesday in Utah after suffering a heart attack, the team announced. In a statement they put out on their official account on Twitter, the Warriors said, "We are absolutely devastated by Dejan Milojevic's sudden passing. This is a shocking and tragic blow for everyone associated with the Warriors and an incredibly difficult time for his family, friends, and all of us who have had the pleasure to work with him. We grieve with and for his wife, Natasa, and their children, Nikola and Masa, as well." Dejan Milojevic was 46 years old. So our condolences, thoughts and prayers to his family, the NBA family, and the Golden State Warriors, and all who knew him for this incredibly sad moment for that team.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. There's officially a new head coach in New England. We got an introductory press conference yesterday from Jerod Mayo, and the 15th head coach in New England has one thing he wants to make very clear.
Now, Bill always says this, managing expectations. For me, I'm not trying to be Bill. I'm not trying to be Bill. I think that Bill is his own man. If you can't tell by now, I'm a little bit different even up here. But what I will say is, the more I think about like the lessons that I've taken from Bill, hard work works, right? Hard work works, and that's what we're all about. When I talk about leadership, most people think it's like a chessboard and a guy moving pieces on the board. I really don't believe that to be correct as far as developing leaders. I think of it more as gardening. Right? Gardeners really don't grow anything. They just make sure the soil is right. They grab the weeds out there. They water it every day, and whatever grows, grows. And that's how I approach leadership. I don't want to be, and we talked about it before, but collaboration is huge. I want to just water seeds. And right now we're in the evaluation process where we are planting seeds, right? We are planting seeds, and hopefully that will lead to the next dynasty here with the Kraft family.
We love a good metaphor, don't we?
I was going to say, love an extendo metaphor. I was going to see how deep into the farming weeds he was willing to go. I don't know if he's got farmers in the family. Hopefully he did right by all of them. And Dad had the audacity to say the D word again for a guy who's been a part of it, to bring up another dynasty there, setting the bar very high to begin with in a place that he knows very well.
Well, I mean, that is the bar, though, right? That's what they achieved, and it's gone down from that. So he's been part of it as a player, and certainly has seen what's gone on as a coach there as well. So he knows it. He knows what the expectations are, and he understands that. So I love this hire, by the way. I mean, and we're going to see, obviously, changes in the organization. I love what he said right there. He said, "I'm different than Bill." You can see it right now, meaning I'm speaking a lot in a press conference, unlike Bill, who doesn't speak a lot in a press conference.
Yeah. Yeah, no, there's definitely that factor of it, but he's a guy who I saw the old clips of him and Tom Brady and one other former Patriots player on a talk show back when they were all young and in the height of the dynasty, and those guys joked and said if we want to get something done in the locker room, we go to Jerod Belichick, Bill's favorite son, and so it seems like he has always been this guy that's been someone who is a favorite of people inside that organization for what he brings, the leadership that you can clearly already see on display, that as a player was certainly well respected. And man, we're in the linebacker era right now. Look, and I mean, you even throw in, and shame on me for forgetting the original Patriots linebacker coach in Mike Vrabel and the job that he's done. So there's some pedigree in this room. And then we've certainly seen that with Antonio Pierce out in Vegas, D'Amico Ryans, who's been up for Coach of the Year in Houston. We're a big linebacker era right now in NFL head coaching.
Yeah, we are. And listen, he's learned from the GOAT. So it will be interesting to see how different this team will be led, because it is going to be different. I mean, it just has to with the different personality. But as I said, I think it's a good hire. As Robert Kraft said, he doesn't see color. He just picks the best coach, and it happened to be a man of color. Jerod Mayo is seeing color a little bit. He said, you better believe being the first black head coach here in New England means a lot to me. I do see color because I believe if you don't see color, you don't see racism. That's what Mayo said. So he understands, the gravity of being the first black head coach for the New England Patriots. And I think he'll do well. I mean, I always love, we're going to get 8 new coaches in different places now. Some will be brand new head coaches, right? And I always love, they say, well, rate them, give it a grade. How the hell do we know? I have no idea what Jerod Mayo is going to do as a head coach. Zero idea. So I can't grade this. I like it. I'm glad he got hired. I'm happy for any coach that gets hired. But to sit there and try and figure out how he's going to do is fool's gold. We have zero idea. Some of the best coordinators of all time tried to become head coaches and failed at it. It's sometimes it's just not about X's and O's. It's how you lead men as well. And Jerod always been a first in, last out guy, always been a film junkie, always been a guy to go to for other players. So I think his teammates, more than anybody else, are just nodding. Yeah, oh yeah, I could see this. This seems like the path that he was on.
Yeah, I mean, all you can do in these situations, especially for Jerod, where you don't have a ton of direct coordinator experience. Like when we did this with D'Amico Ryans, he had helmed a really great defense, and people poked holes in that and looked at the talent there. But you go back and you listen to the way people talked about how he led there, and certainly saw some of the things he did schematically. You had things to point to. Here it's some of the same, where you're relying on opinions and the purviews of people that knew him in those other roles. And so that's all you have to go off now. It is interesting for Patriots fans to hear this. He did an interview with WBZ TV's Steve Burton and was asked about their plans for the 3rd overall pick. And he said, what I will say is this: we're going to draft the best player for a position that is very important. You put the pieces together. Now, you can read that as vague as you want, or you can read that as we're going to go after a quarterback up there. I think would be the hopeful read for a lot of Patriots fans, which would, at least if you're looking for things to indicate, it's all right, they understand where they have to get better and do it in a hurry.
Well, they do, right? I mean, they're starting over with a young head coach. They're going to start over and join at the hip with this young head coach, a young quarterback, to be the guy to go forward. Now, whether they have a veteran there first to start out and bridge the gap, or you get a guy with a high pick and you start him right away, we'll see. But it has to be. If you're going to try and restart this thing, it has to be with a new quarterback. I don't think there's any about that at all. And then, how he's going to run the organization. I mean, that organization was Bill Belichick, right? It started with him and ended with him, and that's not going to be the way it is with Jerod Mayo right away, that's for sure.
No, we're excited to see the differences that come with this hire. We got a little peek in it at that press conference, but you mentioned the importance of quarterback right now, especially in the conference that they play in, because in the AFC, if you essentially don't have someone who's on a Hall of Fame track right now, or who's one of the most talented players in the world, you're not going to have a good time. And Jesse, that's probably a good spot to transition. We'll go to one of their division rivals here as Josh Allen and company get set for, I would say, the biggest test of this iteration of Bills football.
Yeah, I mean, it's Buffalo, it's KC, it's another playoff matchup, but this time Buffalo is hosting Josh Allen was asked about like the respect he has for Patrick Mahomes and sort of this rivalry, this matchup that's been going on between them for the past couple years.
I consider us fairly good friends, and obviously in the offseason we tend to play some golf together. At least we have in the last few off seasons. But you know, he's a fantastic player. His track record and his resume speaks for himself at such a young age, and one of the greatest quarterbacks to already play this game. And you know, he's still growing and still getting better. So yeah, he's not an easy matchup for any team. You know, and they've gotten the best of us in the playoffs in the last few years, and you know, we finally got a home game, and you know, just got to go out there and put our best foot forward and play as hard as we can play.
Yeah. Okay. So he said it. Patrick Mahomes 2-0 against Josh Allen and the Bills in the playoffs. 1-3 in the regular season, and for Mahomes, 1-3. But like he said, guys, first time Patrick Mahomes is going to have to play a playoff game on the road. That's insane.
This is going to quickly become like the, you know, did you know Matthew Stafford and Clayton Kershaw were high school teammates kind of stat that we hear in broadcast booths, or did you know Ryan Fitzpatrick went to Harvard? Everyone's heard this till they're blue in the face, Dad. How much does that actually matter in your mind that Patrick Mahomes has never had to do this and is now getting ready to go do it against one of the hottest teams, if not the hottest team in football?
I don't think it means a thing, quite honestly. I mean, you play games on the road all the time. So what? It's not like he hasn't been in a big situation. So the weather's not going to have an effect. They had just what they played in Kansas City last week. It'll be better in Buffalo. So people make a big deal of it. I don't think it's a big deal at all, quite honestly. I am just amazed, Mike, at the difference in quarterbacks of who could be in the Super Bowl. Think about this in the AFC. It could be C.J. Stroud, which would be unbelievable if it were a rookie to make the Super Bowl, but I don't think a lot of people think that's going to happen. The other choices are your MVP this year, Lamar Jackson, or Josh Allen, or Patrick Mahomes. And then look at the NFC. I mean, the NFC choices are Jordan Love, a first-year starter, Brock Purdy, who has played incredibly well and got hurt in the playoffs last year. He's played well, but still very young. Jerod Goff, who was in the Super Bowl and lost when he was with the Rams. They lost to the Patriots. And Baker Mayfield, you know, kind of a reclamation project. Those are your choices in the NFC as opposed to the AFC, where it's probably, you know, the three best quarterbacks in the league.
Yeah, and it's funny, too, when you list the NFC quarterbacks where outside of Brock Purdy, who is obviously very famously Mr. Irrelevant. Right. There's another stat we've beaten into the ground. But the rest of those guys, former number one overall picks and a first-round pick. Like, now it doesn't feel that way given the path that they've gone since Jerod Goff and Baker Mayfield have both been famously dumped by the franchises that drafted them in those spots. But the point is well served. It's a very different standard right now in the AFC in terms of what you need and how you can get there. And for all of these AFC quarterbacks, I mean, you mentioned Joe Burrow, who we obviously didn't get to see for the majority of this year because of injury. So many of these guys are on teams that have just overwhelmingly benefited from everything their quarterbacks do. And the Buffalo Bills are probably the biggest example of that right now because of postseason Josh Allen and the way that his legs come to affect other teams. We saw that on display as everyone's been breaking it down like it's the damn Zapruder film of Josh Allen, and was he fake sliding in the last game on that 51-yard touchdown run that he had on the scramble. But, Dad, overall, as you look at the battle in this game and what's at stake for Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills, this is one of the most important games for this iteration of the roster. I had thought that in the prior years, they had gotten through their last best chance in terms of how the roster was constructed. We've seen the war of attrition affect them so much on defense, including this last game where they had a bunch of injuries at the second level of that defense. But they're in a position now where they finally got it coming through them. And there is... I'm kind of with you because Kansas City's not a team like Miami that's, either a dome team or a team that's used to playing in warm weather that's going to be jarred by this. Kansas City's not new to this, not new to the environment that they're going to get in Orchard Park. But for Buffalo, this is seen as a victory. Oh, we finally got it on our terms. And so if they're not able to, even in a season where we left them for dead midway through, if they're not able to get over the hump here, this is the kind of loss that can break an organization.
This, Mike, will be the most devastating loss for this team over the last few years because as you mentioned, they finally got KC on the road. Kansas City still doesn't look like the Super Bowl championship team from last year, and Buffalo is playing some of their best ball right now, and a big reason is Josh Allen isn't turning the ball over. So you have kind of everything stacked to your advantage right now. So if it doesn't happen now, the disappointment that's going to go on from the fans to management to the players is going to be like, my God, we have it right here, and we still couldn't get it done. So, yeah, this would be the worst of all the – and let's remember the matchups already. A matchup of these two teams in the playoffs a couple of years ago changed a rule in the NFL. Because how many shots did we see of Josh Allen standing on the sideline as Patrick Mahomes in overtime in the playoffs was going down the field and Kansas City scored a touchdown and Josh Allen never got on the field. Next thing you know, they're changing the overtime rules in the playoffs to now, even if the offense scores a touchdown, the other team gets a chance with the ball. This happened because of these two guys and these two teams. That's how good they are, and that's how much the league said, all right, we got an issue here because one of the best quarterbacks never even got on the field. So they're changing rules because of these two teams and these two guys. So the importance of this game for Buffalo is monstrous.
Yeah, it is massive, and it's the simultaneous version of, hey, you're playing some of the best football in the NFL. You've been playing playoff football since the downstretch back half of the season because of the position you were in, and you're going up against the worst Kansas City Chiefs team in this iteration of the dynasty, right? I think we can all look and say, at least offensively, this is the worst Kansas City has been since Patrick Mahomes took over as the starter. And so you're trying to catch them at that point before Kansas City, based on what we've seen in the past, inevitably retools the way that they do business here. But Dad, you mentioned it, to say that this could be the most painful version of the loss in a world where that 13 seconds is going to hang in the minds of every Buffalo fan until the end of time and what went down towards the end of that game. That's saying an awful lot here in a rivalry, Dad, that's slowly becoming like the new Brady and Manning, right? In terms of the dynamic too, where for so long Tom Brady was the lid on Peyton Manning in the postseason, and despite being a guy that was every bit as talented, in some people's estimations more, that Peyton Manning was versus Tom Brady, they weren't able to get over the hump against that team for so often in the AFC playoffs. And now you've got a very similar dynamic with Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs that have been the standard, and a Bills team that's been incredibly talented but just picked the wrong time in history to do it.
Yeah. Well, listen, it's like, during my era, Hall of Fame quarterback Jim Kelly, quarterback in the Buffalo Bills. Now, it wasn't a dynastic team like Kansas City, one team that ended them, but there were other great quarterbacks and teams out there that, while they got to the Super Bowl, and again, give me going to the Super Bowl and losing rather than not going to the Super Bowl at all, and I'll take it. But they just couldn't finish it because of some of the other teams in the league, and it gets to be somewhat damning when that happens. And that was for the league with Jim Kelly because they got the Super Bowls. But here it's the conference. Just getting out of the conference and getting a chance at the Super Bowl to face somebody in the NFC. This is a big one. This is a monstrous one. I'm glad weather won't really have an effect on this one, or at least it shouldn't. In both potential weather outlooks for both the cold games in Buffalo and in Baltimore, it looks like it's going to be all right. Getting to practice during the week might be tougher than the game itself with the weather, but this is a monster game. Last game of the weekend. I mean, this is one everybody's pointing to.
Yep, this is the one we can only hope we get to test that overtime rule that they change. That would be the best outcome for everybody that's not a fan of either of these teams. Dad, you won't have any of those problems in your game there. Packers-Niners is going to be a much easier weather experience, I'd imagine, for everybody involved here. And a very different dynamic. Like we talked about some of the matchups this weekend where it's great on great, like Bills and Chiefs, a matchup we're used to. This one's a little more interesting as we've got a pair of matchups. You mentioned the Ravens hosting C.J. Stroud and the Houston Texans, but this 49ers team that's been the class of the NFC all year is getting the best version of Jordan Love at a time where that team is peaking. But you've got two young quarterbacks trying to go in and unseed the established power here. And I do believe, as we look more into this, and we'll talk a lot about this game, especially tomorrow, very different challenge defensively for what San Francisco is going to pose, especially in the middle of that defense, than what the Green Bay Packers saw against Dallas.
Yeah, without question. These are two quarterbacks. You know, with San Francisco, it's like the expectation is to be there, right? Even with the young quarterback like Brock Purdy, because he has, in his last year and starting, shown what he's shown and done what he's done on the field. And then with the talent acquisition around them, both offensively and defensively, we've had them at or near the top of the NFC and even the league for a while now, where Green Bay, it was supposed to be that transition year, right? Here we go again, transitioning from a Hall of Fame quarterback to a new quarterback. And Jordan Love has been nothing short of spectacular, especially going into later in the season, putting up better numbers than Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers did in their first year as starters. He has been absolutely amazing. But I know we'll break this down more tomorrow, but I continue to hang on this as one of the biggest stats out there, Mike. Stat on one side and how you play it on the other side. Green Bay did so well tackling right after the catch against the Cowboys. Since 2017, who do you think the number one team in the NFL is on yards after the catch? It's San Francisco.
Kyle Shanahan, San Francisco, yeah.
I mean, the test Green Bay is going to have again on let him catch the 3-yarder, tackle him at 4. Don't let him catch the 3-yarder and turn it into 30. That's where San Francisco lives. So from that side of the ball, that's the matchup I look forward to without question. The other side certainly is Jordan Love and the pass rush coming at him from that defense. But I'm still amazed in just doing that game last week of all the rookie and second-year receivers and tight ends that Green Bay has that have been producing. It is incredible. It's record-breaking, as I mentioned during the game last week and will again this week, of what these young receivers has done. This is the youngest team to be in the playoffs since 1974, and it's the youngest team to win a playoff game. So you want to talk about ahead of schedule. They are, and they don't think anything about that. They believe they can keep moving on.
Yeah, they certainly believe that they can get it done. We'll have plenty of time to sink our teeth in that tomorrow as we look ahead to the divisional round of the NFL playoffs to see who's moving on. But coming up next, let's talk to someone who's getting ready to try and put on that gold jacket about what goes into a Hall of Fame career next.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Former NFL cornerback Eric Allen's illustrious career spanned 14 seasons with Philly, New Orleans, and Oakland. He's a 6-time Pro Bowler, member of the Eagles' 75th anniversary team, and a 2024 Pro Football Hall of Fame finalist. And now he can add to his resume, guest on GoJo and Golic, because he is standing by with the guys right now.
Yeah, Eric, I'm sure that lands in the same vein as all of those other great accomplishments that we just listed. How are you?
Right on top of the list, I tell you guys. Thanks for having me. And as you know, me and your dad spent a lot of times in those locker rooms together, so he helps me get a lot of those things by his great pressures up front.
Yeah, that's nice of you to say. I do appreciate that. All my former teammates are so nice about the fact that I'm on the line with Jerome Brown and Clyde Simmons and Reggie White, and I basically helped everybody up after those plays. But, Eric, listen, your career, and we want to talk about, obviously, today a little bit in the Raiders, which you cover an awful lot. But what an important time for you. 54 interceptions in your career, tied for 21st all-time, 8 defensive touchdowns, tied for 8th, I think, all-time. And I was talking about this earlier, there's a small percentage of people that played in the NFL and an even minute percentage who wear a gold jacket or are a finalist for a gold jacket. So take us through this kind of process in your mental state with it.
Yeah, this is very exciting. It's the first time that I've really been able to kind of promote myself, after, such a long time when you play and you think, okay, I always compared it to baseball and like 500 home runs. Like when you hit 500 home runs, if you're a baseball player, you're in the Hall of Fame. And I thought that about interceptions once you reach that 50 point. So I really never thought about, hey, I'm going to have to actually go out and self-promote and get on radio shows and television shows and have both organizations Eagles and Raiders kind of, pumped me up a little bit. But times have changed, obviously. And I played a long time ago, although you think you can, walk out and do it again. I played a long time ago. So it was just a great opportunity for me to just kind of hit the ground and say, yeah, I think I'm worthy. And a lot of players around the league who I've played against, Jerry Rice, Michael Irvin, all those tremendous receivers I was able to battle against throughout this season have really spoke up on my behalf also. So that was really cool, too, to see those guys that you prepare for, you battle against, and battle with speak up on my behalf. So one more big step, but I feel pretty confident that it should be my time this year.
And talking about this now, you mentioned having to campaign, thinking about it actively, and that 50 interception mark, I was curious about this when you were playing still. Was this something that entered in when that landmark and milestone did hit? Did you allow yourself to kind of think about the potential that one day this would be possible even while you were still playing?
No, not really. It didn't happen really until, the end of your career, after you start seeing, those Hall of Fame games on television, and you see guys who are being inducted, and you're like, wow, I'm like 20 picks away from that, or, similar situation like that. And when you're playing, you always have guys that you're playing against who play your position that you're competitive with. So obviously I was in the NFC East, so Darrell Green was the target. So, that was to keep pace with him, make sure that your numbers always fit. Once you go to the Pro Bowl like 3 or 4 times, then you're like, I need to get the numbers to get there, help my team win. But yes, not until the end of my career did I really think about, man, I can get to 50. And if I get to 50, man, I'm in there.
It's so wild that to have to even come out and talk and have the teams campaign for you as well. It seems ridiculous. Your stats should live by themselves. But that's, like you said, not where we are. So where are you like emotionally? Is this going to be one of those, are you going to be devastated if you're not in? You expect to get in? This has got to be tough for you to just wait on what's going to happen.
Yeah, totally out of your control. Our game is based on being able to adjust and adapt. That's what, our game is about, and you're able to prepare and study, throughout the week. And then on game day, you're able to have an effect on what happens on the field. Obviously, this is in someone's hands. It's a, hopefully, subjective view. You put my numbers up with someone else's numbers, but when I'm, at home here in San Diego and someone's making those decisions based on what? I mean, it can't be the numbers because I should have already been in. It can't, well, I understand, like, the Super Bowl is extremely important, but if that's all it is, then, we're not talking about individual performances. So there is a little bit of nervousness, and yes, I would be very disappointed if my name is not called this year, and you just have to kind of, think about it in a positive way and say to yourself, I did everything I need to do. And this year, a little differently, because like in the end of the year, like November, the young man from the Cowboys, Bland, had tied my interception record, and it was like 30 years. And so people made a whole week of that. So that kind of gave me a little, juice. And it wasn't manufactured. It was something that was kind of organic, right? So that went on. And I think Thanksgiving, I'm sitting down, we're eating Thanksgiving dinner, and he breaks the record. So we're looking at it. And right before he picked it off, I was like, oh, that's going to be a pick right there. I could, just kind of slow motion. And I said, that's a bad ball. It's late. This guy's going to pick it. And he takes it to the house, and then my name comes up again. So it was more organic this time. And so that was pretty cool to have it happen where my family is all sitting around eating Thanksgiving dinner and to have my name kind of blasted all over Thursday Night Football.
No, a lot of great moments. built in there. Yeah, we only got about a minute left here, but I did want to ask you, staying with the positive mindset, if it does happen, you get to put on the gold jacket and you're going in. We always hear about the events around the Hall of Fame, getting to see all the legends and the other people that are a part of that. Is there a player that you grew up watching or someone you tried to model your game after who you'd see there, who you'd be most excited to now call yourself a Hall of Famer amongst?
First of all, it's Mike Haynes. Mike, I think, is arguably the best cornerback to ever play, him in prime, of course. But he just had a tremendous skill set. He was long. You're talking about in the early 80s. And he could 6'2.5", 210 pounds, could stay in front of you, could run like a deer. He was just the ultimate prototype, and I knew I couldn't be that. So what I had to do is try to adapt each and every week. And whatever cornerback that gave a receiver issues or problems the week before, I would just adapt my game to his. So one week I'd play off and, I'd play like Rod Woodson. Then the next week I'd play kind of press and be like what I call like a butterfly, like Darryl Green. I would just be a touch away from the receiver. So I just adapted my game each and every week to all these great players who are in the league. But, of course, Prime is one of my great friends, and we had great battles against each other. But Mike Haynes and Prime are probably my favorite two guys I can't wait to see when I put on that gold jacket, if it happens.
No, it should happen. Again, 54 career interceptions, 8 defensive touchdowns, Eagles Hall of Fame, Eagles 75th anniversary team, 3-time All-Pro, 6-time Pro Bowler. You should be putting that jacket on. And what people, because it's not a stat a lot that you look at with cornerbacks, a dude that would stick his nose right into somebody's chest and drop them as well. But you had to if you were playing that Buddy Ryan defense. There's no doubt about it. EA, you're a Hall of Famer. You deserve to be in the Hall of Fame, and I'll be so happy, we'll be so happy the day you get to put on that gold jacket, man. Good luck.
Thank you, man. I really appreciate it, guys. Anytime, just give me a call.
Thanks.
Absolutely.
We definitely will after
Great
you got
Eric
the gold
Allen.
jacket on. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, we say we're going to bring you back once you got the hardware here, no doubt about it.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. We have an amazing guest standing by with us right now. He spent 9 seasons in the NFL. He's now the darling of the internet. The fellas are standing by with meme lord Spice Adams in the flesh. We're thrilled to have you here.
Hey, good morning. Good morning.
Spice, I have to imagine it's like this for a lot of people, but I cannot hear your voice without hearing it in like some of the memes or skits that you've done over the years. Like, what's it like being the most famous guy on football's internet, man? Is it nice?
Oh, knock it off, man. I'm just having a good time, man. I'm having fun, man, and living the dream, man. We were just talking before we came on live about the kids and everything, man. I volunteer coach football at my son's high school, volunteer coach for wrestling, and then we got track and field. So I'm a dad out here, man. Y'all, you know how it is.
I'm glad you got him wrestling. I'm with you. That's a fantastic sport.
Oh my gosh.
For what you do, obviously a long career in the NFL, but then to throw yourself into some of the things that you do, I mean, my God, from the outfits to the actions, at some point you had to decide, okay, if I'm going to do this, I need to just throw caution to the wind and be as crazy as I can be.
You know what? It's just everything that I've been doing already. Like, I used to do that when I was home, and, I would try to get people to laugh that came over to the house because I was the only child. So I didn't have any brothers and sisters that I could, do my jokes on and stuff like that. So when people came over to the house, I would dress up in just crazy outfits, just something that I found that my uncles left around or something like that. And I would just have a good time. And then, I started playing football at Penn State. I would do the same thing. I would do it in practice. I'd do it, in the off season. I'd do it, at camp and stuff like that, man. And now I just put a camera in front of myself and just put it out on social media.
And listen, it's very important stuff, and you mentioned all the hats that you wear now in your life. You are quite literally wearing a hat today for Casey's Pizza, who you're here on behalf of here. So what is the important job title that you've now added to your long list with them?
I am the Chief Pizza Beer Officer, but I'm looking for the next Chief Pizza and Beer Officer. So, and in order to be that, then you have to have a love for pizza. Mike, I see you looking like you want to be the Chief Pizza and Beer Officer. Okay, well, look, man, all you can do is go to Casey's.com/bestjobever. And then, you know, you can enter yourself into being one, man. I don't know if y'all got a Casey's out there where you are. Where are you at right now, Mike?
I'm in Arizona. I don't know if I don't think there's one out here. I'm not sure. I'm going to look now, but Spice, I want this job. I mean, I know my son does as well, but I'm going to go age before beauty here and say I want and need this job.
Hey, so look, you go to Casey's, right? It's a gas station. All right, let's keep it. It's a gas station. Usually, you don't get food. Usually, you don't get food at a gas station. You go to get fuel. But when you go, so let me give you a quick story. So I go to Casey's. This is a Casey's right around the corner from me. When I go inside, I put the gas in the car, unleaded, not regular. I just do regular. I don't do the premium. I just do regular. I'm a regular dude. You know what I'm saying? I'm not paying that extra money. Just put the gas in, man. The car's gonna drive. I don't need the premium. For what?
Boom.
Anyways, get regular. And so I'm walking in and I see a car outside and it's wrapped with like pizza. They got a pizza on it or whatever. So I'm like, oh, okay, a delivery man is coming in here to get something to drink or something like that, get some water, whatever. So I go inside and, I'm getting some chips or something like that. And then I see some pizza. And, they got it in the heating carousel or whatever, so it's spinning around or whatever. Right. And usually when you see that, you're like, ugh. Like you go in there, you might see some hot dogs that have been in there for like 3 days or something like that. So anyway, this pizza is looking like, hey, it looks like the pizza is looking at me like, come on.
Yeah.
So I see it and I'm like, man, that pizza looks. So I go and I go to take one, but then I see in the back is somebody just like making it from scratch. Like they making it with their hands, they putting fresh ingredients and all this stuff in. The kitchen looks clean. And then I'm looking around like, is this a gas station? Like it looks great. And so then I'm putting two and two together because I start seeing these cardboard boxes, these pizza cardboard boxes. So I'm like, wait a minute. They deliver pizza? That's what the pizza delivery guys out there for. So I'm like, man, so I'm like, all right, let me buy it and let me see what it tastes like. So I taste it and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. What are the odds that I actually go to this place, I actually like it, and now I'm doing this campaign with them? It's amazing, man. It's amazing.
Hey, man, look at God. And people who sleep on eating food from gas stations clearly haven't been south of a certain portion of the United States, because I promise you can find some grub in the gas station. Shout out to Oxford, Mississippi for always taking care. So I'm going to have to investigate this. Me and Dad are going to do our homework and research and then throw our hat in the ring for this illustrious position right now, because we think we can help you out with all of that. The great Spice Adams, kind enough to join us here now. Spice, I'm curious, you mentioned growing up being an only child. You grew up in Detroit, so I know you didn't end up playing for the Lions, but growing up around there and knowing the history of that franchise and now seeing what's gone on with Dan Campbell and these guys, what's that been like?
Man, you know what? I go hard for the 49ers and for the Bears, and of course the Bears because, I live here. I bought my first house here. My kids were born here. So I feel like I'm forever indebted to the city of Chicago. But me being from Detroit, like I'm so excited for the city. I'm excited for the Lions. It's been a long time coming. And, this is where I'm from, man. So I got roots there. So, of course, I'm happy for the Lions. But growing up, I could not be a Lions fan because I just could not take the heartbreak. Because I knew they were going to lose. So what I did was I started becoming a fan of individuals. So I was a fan of Barry Sanders because I knew he was going to rush for 100 yards, but ultimately I knew they were going to end up losing. So I had like this love-hate relationship with the Lions, but then I was like, all right, let me get a system going here. So Curran Waldrop, yeah. Luther Ellis, yeah. Herman Moore, yeah. Johnny Morton, yeah. You know, so I just started like, I'm going to just focus on a person. And that's it. Like, because I know the Lions are not going to win. And so that was my system. But now it's like, they look really good, man. I'm proud of them.
Yeah, they do. As far as a team, as you mentioned, you know, the last 5 years of your career was in Chicago. You still live in Chicago. Listen, we all as former players have an opinion on what the Bears should do with Justin Fields and the #1 pick. But what we say doesn't matter because they don't care what we say. Do you think the Bears are going to draft a quarterback #1 and move on from Justin Fields?
I have no idea. I didn't think you know, back, I don't know when it was, 2016 or whatever, when they had the chance to get a Patrick Mahomes or Deshaun Watson, they got Mitch Trubisky. So I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what they're thinking. I mean, of course, we have a new GM right now, but I don't know what they're going to do. What I would do is I would keep Justin Fields and surround him with talent. I would not give up on him. I would not trade him or anything like that. I think he has a tremendous upside. He just needs to get some consistency with an offensive coordinator and a QB coach. And, you know, he's probably had 3 to maybe 4 offensive coordinators. And so it's just like you're being a rookie every year. I remember switching from a 4-3 to a 3-4, and it was just like it was night and day. So everything that I learned in a 4-3, I had to throw it out the window because a 3-4 is nothing like a 4-3. Yeah, like when I get in a 4-3, I get in my stance and I'm skinning and grinning. When you get into your stance in a 3-4, you have to. I gotta on the offensive line to move. And I'm talking about like you got to wait for 600 pounds to move instead of attacking it. Are you kidding me?
You're right. You're right.
So
you're
so true. It's a lot of change, and we hope Justin can navigate it as well as you were able to. Spice, we appreciate the time, brother. Appreciate all the work with Casey's. Thanks so much, man.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right, guys, time to finish off the show the way we always do. This, that, and the third. 3 quick stories to send you into the rest of your day. As always, download, subscribe, rate, review us, leave us a 5-star rating. Try and check us out here live if you can. We're 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern, Monday through Friday. Let a friend know. Bring them on over. DraftKingsNetwork.com, the YouTube channel, Samsung TV Plus, Roku, and more. And if you miss it live for whatever reason or miss any of our great guests, shout out to the great Spice Adams, former NFL defensive tackle, who just joined us here. Hall of Fame finalist Eric Allen, my dad's former teammates, one of the all-time great defensive backs in the NFL. You can catch that wherever you get your podcast or right here available on YouTube when we're done with the show. Guys, let's get to this, that, and the third, and let's start off with this. Now, this probably applies more to Jessie, considering the part of the country she lives in versus where me and Dad are right now. DeAndre Ayton found out the hard way that Mother Nature doesn't care if you've got a game going on. The Portland Trail Blazers, where DeAndre Ayton calls home right now, had to send out team personnel to try and help DeAndre Ayton get out of his neighborhood as he was boxed in by sheets of ice apparently flanking his neighborhood. Dad, ultimately ineffective, unavailable, and had to miss their game last night against the Brooklyn Nets. Have you ever seen anything in your multiple decades of covering sports, a player DNP because of ice?
No. And I mean, how do you put that down, right? I mean, how do you, it's an injury or whatever. I'm not sure how you list that, but I've never seen this. I've heard of people not being able to get to practice for sure, but a game, I mean, it's one of those where you know the conditions, if you have to leave early or leave, and I don't know the situation out there, but I have not seen this one where an actual game day you did not make the game because of weather.
So this is so legit, though, because the Blazers literally sent people. They sent a team to go get their man, and they couldn't get to his house. So you know it's legit. Like, it's not like he was like, ooh, I'm it's a little icy out there. I think I'm going to stay home for this.
Well, because that was my question. Because, like, you look at his background, like, born in the Bahamas, went to high school in San Diego, went to prep school in Arizona, went to college at Arizona at U of A, and then was the Suns draft pick. So he's only ever been warm by and large in his background. And, Dad, I mean, I'm sure you've had this, but I had former teammates of mine when we got to Notre Dame. I grew up in the East Coast, went to college in the Midwest. I had teammates I had to teach how to drive in the snow or help learn how to drive in the snow who were dealing with that for the first time. So part of me thought, it's like, all right, the guy hasn't been cold very much. Maybe hasn't driven through or worked around this very much. But if they got SEAL Team Portland 6 going out there and they can't get him out, now I'm willing to extend. I want to see visuals of what he was dealing with, though, because I can't picture this.
No.
Me too. And to Jesse's point, I completely agree, because everything you laid out, Mike, is right. So you wonder how about somebody's ability to drive and stuff they haven't driven in. But as you mentioned, they sent a team out there to try and get him, and they couldn't do it. So that had to be serious. I'm with you. I want to see some video of this, because
apparently
this is so wild.
Sheets of ice on the streets. So I want to see it. Yeah, I want to see it.
Opportunity.
Yeah.
Because I get he was stressed about not being able to get to work, which we've all been there. But at some point, you got to realize it's not going to work. Turn this thing on. Let's get the footage out there so that we can run B-roll with this. DeAndre's got to be thinking about content all the time, man. Less basketball, more content. Speaking of someone who understands content in basketball, Jesse, let's get to that. Jimmy Butler, always giving, has been in the lab in a way that none of us could have possibly predicted.
So apparently he's been working on a country album for over a year now. He says he's recorded over 60 tracks, and he hopes to choose from around 200 when he's done. Guys, I have a lot of questions here. And first and foremost being, and I don't work in the music industry, so I don't exactly understand how this works. Is that normal to have 200 songs to choose from for an album? I feel like he's overdoing it a little bit.
This is one of those, Mike, we need our buddy Jason Fitz, who, again, played with the band Perry, was a band leader of the band Perry. He's been in that business for a long time before jumping into the sports talk business. He would know this, because we've had conversations. I have no idea how normal this is. I'm sure he's getting a lot of help once he has all those songs about a true producer to figure out which ones would do it. But kudos to him, man. You go for that.
Well, that's what he said he wants to be, Dad. He says he wants to sort of be like the DJ Khaled of country music, where he's less a singer and more a curator of the songs that end up making their way on there. So that's going to be the interesting part. And listen, Jimmy, look at the examples of some of the greats that have come before you here. Save them. Taylor Swift just made an entire living, an extra leg of her albums, off releasing vault tracks, previously unreleased stuff there. So you save them later on, you throw them on deluxe albums, and you're ready to go. It's interesting, too, because he's from Tomball, Texas, which I've heard Bomani Jones talk about, like, is, you know, Texas. And so people would think it comes from there. He said he actually started to love country when he was at Marquette in college. So he's always been a guy with a diverse array of interests. Started the coffee business inside the NBA bubble, upcharging rich guys in there when they had no other options. We've seen him show up to media days for the last couple of years with either, you know, extension dreadlocks. This year he went with the emo look. He's always been someone who's very entertaining. But country album Jimmy Butler, didn't have it on the bingo card. I listened to Andre 3000's Fluid album, so I will absolutely listen to whatever Jimmy Butler's putting out here on the country music charts.
So I've seen, contradicting articles that he recorded the 60, I get, but did he write them? Did he write these or just record them? Because we know there are songs out there that are written.
Sports Illustrated says he's written about 60 country songs for an album.
Wow.
That's a lot of songs.
That's If that's the truth, that is really impressive.
Yeah.
Good for him.
And there we go. You know what? Listen, learn from Kristen Juszczyk. Shoot your shot with Taylor Swift. See if you can get her on a track. Try and blow up here. Acquire currency. Pass go. Collect $200. Jesse, let's get to the third. We've talked a fair amount about food on today's show, thanks to some great reporting from Ross Tucker. But we got even better reporting yesterday about what's fueled the Baltimore Ravens and why they should now be your overwhelming Super Bowl favorite if they weren't already.
Yeah, apparently the Ravens love to be snacking, always be snacking. The Uncrustables sandwiches, they're the small pre-packaged peanut butter and jelly. I mean, we all know, often seen in lunch boxes throughout the country. Little packaged sandwiches. Apparently, the Ravens go absolutely ham on these, with anywhere from 30 to 60 packs disappearing a day, with 7,500 being eaten per season. So they are a favorite on the Ravens snack wall. I'm not super surprised by this rate. I mean, GoJo, this is like a great way to get your peanut butter, get your carbs in, right? Like this is a good wholesome snack for the boys.
100%. Shout out to the folks at the Baltimore Banner. Gianna Hahn did this article doing the Lord's work. And you're right, because especially young athletes, lazy. You need stuff quick. You need easy access because they got a lot going on. You're going to and from meetings, practice, all this stuff. You're looking for quick energy. Like, think halftime snacks this would fall into. But, Dad, we used to absolutely mainline Uncrustables when I was in college. Me and Braxton Cave, my roommate on the roads, you'd stay in the hotel for home games and on. We'd be going down between those and Rice Krispie treats and absolutely murdering them at night, sitting in our beds, just throwing the wrappers on the floor. Inevitably, someone gets up to pee at like 3 a.m., and you just hear wrappers crunch underfoot. Uncrustables are a staple of any sports locker room worth their salt.
One of the greatest snacks of all time. And Sarah Snyder, she's the director of sports nutrition, talking about these. So their nutrition is putting these up for the players. So hell yeah. Hell yeah. They also go through 6,200 sticks of beef jerky, 1,800 bags of sunflower seeds a year, and other things like, energy bars and things like that. But we know what this, and listen, I'll eat an Uncrustable every day, multiple. I love them. Mike, I know you love them. We know what the question is here. Jesse, have you ever had an Uncrustable?
No, I haven't.
God,
but I do.
Come on.
I like peanut butter and jelly. It's the same thing.
I know, but you haven't had this.
No, I haven't
But it's
had
without the
red
crust and it's
dye
in a
number
pocket.
40. No, I haven't had red dye number 40 and citric acid and whatever else is in these.
No.
Okay, true. Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Oh my
yes,
God.
I'm a millennial woman, so I'm not going to drink out of a plastic water bottle, but I will get Botox in my forehead, okay? I'm a millennial.
She contains multitudes, folks, just like the best Uncrustables contain grape jelly and not strawberry jelly. And upon this rock, I will build my church. If you rock with us, download, subscribe, rate, review this podcast. Eat an Uncrustable while you do it. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow.